Okay, good morning and welcome everybody. So we're here today with the Bucks Skills Show and the Bucks Skills Hub. My name's Max, I'm from Pathway CTM. I'm hosting the session today. The session today is about jobs for the future. I know that we have a lot of students that have logged in, a lot of schools that have logged in. Some are still logging in, some are still getting started. The session is being recorded so that we're going to have a really valuable resource as well. But for those of you that are watching live, welcome to the session. Find the chat box. If you have questions, there's a Q&A box as well. Start putting questions in the Q&A box. Remember, we are talking about jobs for the future and we're going to get information across to you. We've got some great panelists here this morning as well. I'm going to introduce you to Dr. Paul Mellor. He's going to give us a brief introduction about why we're here, why this session is being run. And then we're going to go into introductions from the panel. So then Paul will let us know who he is and what he does and what his company does. And then we're going to go through the panel. So let's get started. Good morning. Welcome, Dr. Paul.
Hi there. Thanks for the intro. So we're here today to talk about jobs for the future. As an example of that, I'd like to just say a little bit about what we do. So we're a kind of high-tech company, I guess is what you describe us as. We make, if you can see that, these little things that go on the end of squash rackets. So the company's called Racketware. This thing on the end of your squash racket is what we build. It's a little sensor, and as you play your game of squash, it records all the movement of your racket and then gives you some feedback on an app to tell you how you can play better squash. It uses kind of AI and machine learning and all that stuff. So we're only a small company, and for us, the question is, how do we make one of those things? And I sat down and thought about all the different skills that we needed to get that product to market. You know, skills like, inside the sensor's little electronic printed circuit board, someone has to design the electronics for that, lay it all out onto a printed circuit board, test it. Someone else has got to program the chips that go on here and make it do something. Otherwise, it's just a dead, piece of circuit board. We have all these plastic components that fit together here. These are all very complex plastic shapes that have to be built, designed on CAD tools and so on. Then we have to do all the AI stuff to take a bunch of numbers from the sensor and turn it into something even vaguely useful for squash players. We have an app, a lovely app on our smartphone that's got to be designed, it's got to look good. And then people have got to write the code for that to make it all work. So there is a phenomenal amount of skills involved in just taking a small product like that and getting it to market. And that's not to mention the skills that you need to actually put the website up, to market the product, produce all the images and videos needed to sell the thing, digital marketing, all those kind of skills, finance skills, legal skills. There's a massive bunch of skills that are needed to bring even a small product like that out to market. So it kind of worked for me because my background is I've been a lifelong squash player, and I did a degree in electronics and a PhD in computer science. So it was like the perfect job for me to be doing kind of electronics thing in squash. But I was kind of lucky to get that. We've been out onto the market to try and hire a lot of skills over the period we've been running. And it's not that easy to find people with these kind of skills. And if you do find them, you end up paying them a fair amount of money because they can command decent salaries. So I would say, from our perspective, looking at you guys, you've got a great opportunity at this point in your lives to learn these skills, to pick up all these different skills that you need. And that is a fantastic opportunity because when you get into a job, you don't always have the chance to, to learn anymore. It's a good time to do it, while you're in the environment that you guys are in. So I'd say, from my perspective, I'd say learn as much as you can, get as far ahead as you can now, go as fast as you can, pick up all the skills you can get, because that's the kind of stuff you're going to need when you get out in the marketplace if you want to join companies like ours or companies like, the other companies that you'll hear from in the rest of the pitch.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Paul. That's awesome. Okay, right. Let's meet the next panelist, and that's going to be Rob. Rob from Nammo.
Thanks. Thanks. I'm Rob Subby. I'm the Vice President of Nammo Space. Nammo is actually a kind of an international aerospace and defense company. I specifically represent the space division, and unlike most jobs where you say it's not exactly rocket science, the field I'm in, our job is exactly that. Now that sounds pretty daunting because obviously rocket science, we talk about space, and that seems like a fairly unattainable goal for a lot of people. But the reality is, there's a lot of things that Dr. Mellor just talked about in terms of the skills and the capabilities that he needs to produce the products that he's working on for his company, transferred directly into all of the same types of skills that I require. When you take a rocket engine and you break it down into its little pieces, I need material scientists, I need people that can make bits, I need people that can do some of the calculations and the engineering, the data analytics, developing websites to help grow the product portfolio so our customers can see it. There's so many read acrosses between the different industries that when you start looking at manufacturing, there's so many skills that you can develop that you can cross over into any industry. And that's something that I think is important for all of you guys to consider as you're mapping your careers out for the future. Is those transferable skills allow you to step from one industry to another. And from my perspective, it's very clear that the understanding that the UK is actually an interesting space player is something that most people don't understand. So careers in space are becoming increasingly something that is available to everyone in the UK. It's a growing market, and it's something where I'm personally looking for the skills. From Nammo's perspective, there is a skill shortage. We can see that from the recruitment. I'm actually looking at how I can take the right type of people with the right type of attitude and build those skills within the company. So we're looking not only at bringing people in with competencies and skills to grow our business because they can come out of the box running straight away, but we recognize that we need to grow the talent in the UK to cope with the growth that the space industry is going to see. We all use space, from your mobile phones, GPS signals, telecommunications, use of the internet. It's becoming something we all use. It's not just traveling to far off distant planets and looking at things that happened millions of years ago. It is real time. It's stuff that we're doing today, and it's really important to how we move forward as in terms of the use of our technology. So I think one of the key things for me is I'm interested in people who have great problem solving capability, a great ability to research and learn. If you don't have all of the skills, then I'm prepared to put those in to you as long as you have those capabilities and those key traits. Okay.
Fantastic. That's brilliant. I'm struggling with my mute button. That's brilliant. That's good to hear. So let's move on to the next panelist, and let's meet Kathryn. Kathryn from Pinewood Studios.
Hello, good morning, everybody. My name is Kathryn Maidment. I'm Senior Community and Education Outreach Manager for Pinewood Studios, based in Iverheath in Buckinghamshire. Pinewood Studios is obviously home to one of the largest filming facilities in the UK at the moment. And I say at the moment because the sector has gone crazy in terms of skills needed and space needed to film content. I think before the pandemic, we were in a healthy situation in terms of the creative sector and with film and high-end television. During the pandemic, I think everybody's viewing habits changed and the demand for content has become extreme to the point where studios and filming spaces are popping up everywhere. Now, Pinewood's part of what we call the West London cluster, which includes Warner Brothers at Leavesden, Pinewood Studios, Shepperton Studios, but recently we've heard about Sky Studios in Elstree, Dagenham Studios, Shinfield and Reading. These are all spaces that are needed to facilitate the demand for productions that want to come and film in the UK. And obviously with those productions come a host of jobs and skills. And I can pretty much guarantee that every single one of you that has an interest or a skill that is listening here can use those skills and interests for a job within the creative sector and film, high-end television, gaming. It's just a case of figuring out what that skill is, what their interest is, and how it transfers into our sector. Totally agree with Rob, though, about transferable skills. It's really important that I think we consider these days a career pathway isn't necessarily a straight line. It can branch off. into many different directions. It's those core key skills that you need for any job that could take you on any journey. And I think half of your journey and half of your battle with your career choices or your career path would be about your personal motivation, your personal passion, and your personal interest in whatever it is you decide to do. So all you have to do is look at the end of any high-end television or film production, the credit list at the end of any of those productions, just to see how many jobs are needed to make that program or that film that you have just watched. They're all physical jobs. They're all needed. They're all people that are needed. And if anybody needs help trying to figure out how to pursue any of those jobs, please let me know. I can point you in the right direction. But in terms of the creative sector, I would say now is the time to start thinking about getting into it. It's only going to get busier.
Fantastic, brilliant info. For all the students watching, now there's some information that's come at you there this morning. What I will say is look at the companies that represented, listen to the difference between the three that we've heard from so far, and then the others that we're going to hear from in a second. Look at what we're saying about jobs of the future and the skills that are needed. And we're going to delve a little bit more into that. But remember that this is all on the Bucks Skills Hub. And if you go to the Bucks Skills Hub, you will see the recordings that we've done previously. You will see the links that will take you to all of these companies that we're talking to and more information about what they do, how they do it. And listen to what Kathryn said from Pinewood Studios, how many other studios they have as well, and all of the types of jobs that are available. There's so many different things. So you need to start to think about more your skills, your strengths. What do they lend themselves to? And then we're going to talk a little bit more about jobs for the future. And we've already seen how they've changed in terms of the technology and racketware that probably didn't exist 20 or 30 years ago. So let's move on and let's meet Paul from Flannery Plant Hire. Good morning. How are you?
I'm very well, Max. Good morning to you. Good morning to everybody. So my name is Paul Skitt. I'm the Skills Development Director at Flannery Plant Hire. Flannery Plant Hire are one of the UK's largest plant hire companies. So all the big machines that you see around construction sites and infrastructure sites, that's us. We have nearly 4,000 machines across the UK, and we'll be 50 years old next year. So we're coming up to a milestone there. Just in terms of sort of linked to jobs of the future, we discussed it a bit last night, but an increasing amount of our fleet, of our 4,000 fleet, is now becoming hybrid and electrical. And we touched on it earlier that, so in terms of jobs for the future, we've got a significant shortage of maintenance engineers who know how to maintain and engineer hybrid and electric vehicles. So that's a significant job shift. But going back to what Rob and Kathryn said about attitude and willingness to learn and develop, that's key to us. We're setting up technical training centres across the UK to support technical training for both plant operators and plant mechanics. And linked to what Rob said about GPS and how space sort of filters down to everything we do. One of the big things we're doing at the moment is that most of the machines that we have are fitted with GPS machine control, and actually GPS machine control makes sure that the job is done more efficiently and more environmentally effectively because it's done the first time. So just some of the technology is changing how infrastructure projects are being implemented. So we'll touch on that later, but nice to meet you all.
Thank you very much. That's brilliant. And there we go. One thing I will say, which used to confuse me when I was younger, you guys are all smarter than me. But when we talk about plant hire, he doesn't literally just hire out plants, because that's what I used to think it was when I was younger. And I thought that was weird, although there are companies that do that now. We're talking about the big machinery that exists on building sites and in construction places. So we're talking about big things, all those big, exciting pieces of machinery. And listen to what we said there about electrical. We touched on it earlier before we started the session whilst people were logging in, that electrical vehicles, hybrid vehicles are becoming more important and more widespread. But are there enough mechanics to be able to know how to work on those? Because that technology has changed. So we're looking at jobs for the future, and let's start to think about that being part of the future as well, that those jobs will be changing. Old jobs will phase out and new ones will come in, and we can all learn and change and retrain. But you guys are at the start of your careers. You are young enough to be thinking about, what does the future look like and where should I be going? What's a good avenue to get into? Brilliant, fantastic. Right, let's meet the last panelist, Harin. Harin from the University of Buckingham. Good morning.
Good morning, Max, and good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm Professor Harin, the Dean of the Faculty of Computing Law and Psychology at University of Buckingham. the home of the 2-year degree. Whilst I still remain as an academic with a focus on AI, machine learning, and data science, I'm also a member of the senior leadership of the university. So I had to have an entirely broad range of skill sets in my variety of roles. Higher education is generally very traditional, slow to change. However, the pandemic has accelerated our change. A lot of digital work is happening both in our teaching, learning, as well as administrative areas. So whether you're an academic or a member of the professional services, you do need a broad set of skills and new set of skills to thrive in academia. Of course, as a university, we are about training graduates with skills for future, but we are a big employer as well with about 400 full-time and part-time members of staff. I look forward to receiving your questions. Thank you, Max.
That's fantastic. Brilliant. Okay, so like we said, think about what we've got represented here. We are talking about jobs for the future, and with jobs, we need to talk about skills and what skills are needed. We've got a lot of students online this morning listening and watching, and also a lot of students will be watching this recording as well. Take the time after this session, after you've watched this recording, to think about what skills you have and what strengths you need to move forward. Remember what I said on the Bucks Skills Hub, there will be those videos about skills, specifically looking at skills and how we develop them and what we need for the workplace. I've got questions, and I'm not going to ask each panelist the same question, otherwise we're going to get very similar answers all the time, but we've got a few things that we want to cover. The first one is actually a really important one, and again, it does touch on skills, but I'm going to ask Kathryn this one first. I know I said I was going to follow a certain order, Kathryn, and you said please don't make me go first, but I am going to ask you this because of a discussion we had the other evening, and because of where you work and how many different jobs are available in that sector. Question is we've got here, what skills do young people need to become readily employable? What are the base skills that we need to become employable?
I think I touched on that briefly on my introduction. It's positivity, communication, the ability to learn and listen. I think that the students listening here probably don't realize how work ready they are getting without actually realizing it. And that's just in terms of punctuality. You guys all have to get to school on time. You have to get to your classes on time. You have to hand your homework on time. You have to work as team players. You have to work as individuals. Contribute to lessons, listen in lessons, communicate. They're all really key skills that you need to take into the workplace, whatever you decide to do. So I would say that they're the main characteristics. I think we spoke on the panel the other night, Max, and I had one skill, which was typing back in the day when I was trying to get into my job. But with that typing skill, I got into a company and worked my way up through learning, through listening, through asking questions. And I think that's really important. I don't always aim for the top end jobs. Start at the bottom and work your way up if you're unsure. Because, as I said before, your career path doesn't have to go in a straight line. It could go any which way you choose to take it. Most of it's up to you. That's all. That's it. I can see a squirrel. There's a squirrel in your background. Sorry, I got excited.
Keep watching, you'll see plenty of them. And that's brilliant to hear there. We're hearing about those skills and those things that it's a really important message for young people, you students, to understand that a lot of these skills you already have and you are building them, and they're in your toolkit already. And you just need to develop them and keep using them and keep honing them. Don't worry so much about the qualification side of things if you are in the lower years, because it's about building yourself and that toolkit, and then look to what you want to get into and where your skills lend themselves, and then go and get those qualifications. We've got a question here from the 9th form in one of our schools, and they've said, what attitude do you look for? So Kathryn, what attitude would you look for?
Positivity, passion, anything that could take you forward as a potential employee, to learn as much as you can about where it is you want to be and what you want to do. A lot of it is about asking questions. So just be passionate, communicative, honest, approachable, all of the things that we possess already. Just positive mental attitude.
Perfect. Fantastic. I think that's really good advice. And actually, Rob from Nammo, I'm going to ask you the same question as well, because from what I understand and what your introduction, you're in a very different industry, and being in rocket science and in that sort of space stuff, I would imagine that you have to have qualifications, specific qualifications to do specific jobs, but then other skills are similar. You know, what attitude do you look for in any employee? What kind of skills do we need?
So it's really interesting because Kathryn's response was so very close to exactly how I'd respond. So one of the comments I make to all the people I work with in terms of the recruitment into my company is the phrase I always use is, I need to see passion and enthusiasm. You can't teach passion and enthusiasm. Everything else, it is possible to invest the time to put the skills into people, but you need to want to learn it. Now, I guess my commentary on that is, by the fact you can't teach it, encouragement is that you find the things that you feel passionate about and you focus on those things in terms of developing your career. It's exactly how I got into where I got into, is because I used to take my toys apart as a child. I used to find out how they worked, I put them back together again. Often they didn't work when I put them back together again, but I got better at it. So eventually I was able to do the job I'm doing now. So focusing on the things that you really enjoy doing invokes the passion and enthusiasm. That's the bit that I want to see most and foremost. And if I've got that, the rest of it comes. Obviously, there are academic qualifications, etc., that are necessary to get to different levels of the business. But I think employers are embracing the ability to invest in people to make that happen. I'm investing at the present moment in apprentices, but those apprentices, we're bringing them in, they've got the right attitude, the right mindset, punctuality, enthusiasm, passion, curiosity. Curiosity is another one. I love to hear people asking the questions and finding out more and more about what their understanding is on something. But we bring apprentices in, we train them up in their qualifications. We will then invest in them again to put them through degree level qualifications. So you don't have to just take the conventional route of education and into academia. You can go through different routes, and those options are now quite open for people.
Fantastic. And that's really great to hear. So listen to those words again about the fact that you can go in a company like Rob's, doing that apprenticeship, but you have to bring those skills and you have to bring that positive attitude, that curiosity, that enthusiasm, that willingness to work, to discover. So we're looking again, it's more about the skills, and there's now different pathways. This is why we're doing this, because there's very many different pathways for early career people like yourself to get into different industries. I'm also going to ask Paul Mellor, similar sort of question, but also I want to understand, like the jobs in your sector or with what you do, are they the same? Are they changing in the future? Are they looking to be slightly different? And are they different now to what they were 10, 15 years ago?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say they do evolve, because we work in a high-tech sector and technology evolves. So, the kind of languages people use now to program computers in are different than the languages I learned when I was doing my degree or at school. The way everything's done evolves and improves. But I'd say underlying all that are the kind of core kind of skills that, other people have talked about, just applying yourself, curiosity, and so on and so on. I think they're key things. And also there's certain kind of underlying skills, if you do maths or some of those, basic subjects that help your brain work in a certain way, in our kind of industries, I guess we need people who are kind of logical thinkers, able to break problems down into small pieces, solve little bits and build things back up again. So the ability to, to look at things in that way, if you've got kind of a decent background in maths and some of the sciences, then your brain is heading down the right route already, I would say. So even though the technology, yes, it does evolve, things are changing constantly, but you can keep up with it because you've built the kind of core skills so that you can follow the technology curve as it goes along.
Fantastic. Good to hear again. So we're starting to see that popular theme is about those skills, and then because technology will evolve and change, and you just need to learn to keep up to pace with it. And it's about those skills. Now, Julia, I can see you have your hand up.
Thanks, Max. It was just it just occurred to me listening to Paul and listening to everybody actually. I've just posted in the chat a link to a video that came out on the BBC that's got Paul in it, Paul Mellor, and it goes on. If you watch the whole thing, it talks about the AI to do with the squash rackets that Paul's been developing, but then it goes on to show robots being used in physiotherapy, and it's absolutely fascinating. And so for those of you who are thinking about, for instance, maybe going into physiotherapy, watch out, because robots are going to be there to help you along the way. Anyway, just wanted to raise that point.
Perfect. Thank you very much. I'm going to ask Paul from Flannery similar questions as well, because of the industry that you're in. And maybe this is just my view, but when you think about it in the plant hire, I don't know if that would change much apart from now that we're talking about what you've just said about becoming more hybrid and electrical. But then to work in the industry that you work in, what kind of skills do people need in there? Is it, again, similar to what we've already heard? And how do you account for the new technology? How are you doing that? Do you use apprentices as well in your business? And the second thing I'm going to ask you, Paul, is when you speak, just give us a little bit more volume on the voice, please.
Is that a bit better now? Can you hear me?
Perfect.
Good. I'll take the sort of second question first. Yeah, we do take on apprentices, probably 30 to 40 a year, plant operative apprenticeships, so plant drivers, plant mechanics, also hire controllers who actually sort of facilitate the customer engagement around hiring out the machines. I'll touch on what other people have said, certainly around core skills around positivity, willing to learn, but just from a future jobs point of view, what you'll start to realize is around machines is that actually the technology is there to have autonomous machines, driverless machines. So what might happen in the next 5, 10, 15 years is that you will be having, the drivers will be sitting in a room with a laptop controlling the machine that is somewhere else. So actually what technology is going to change the way that machines and operators have to learn. Some of the core skills will be the same, but the electrification of our machines and the autonomous element to machines is going to advance, and that's where some of the jobs will be in the future, that they actually might not be sitting in the machines, there'll be remote workers controlling the machine.
Fantastic. Okay, another great example of how technology changes, but we still need certain skills to be able to go forward. There is a question that has come in, and it says, on top of all the soft transferable skills that we've been mentioning, are there any specific skills, or I suppose jobs that we're looking for in the future? For example, are we looking at coding, carpentry, and I suppose we could look at mechanics or others? Is there anybody on the panel specifically who would like to answer that question, or should I pick somebody? I was thinking Harin might be able to answer that one. Go for it, Harin.
Thanks, Max. Yeah, sure. I mean, of course, I'm in computing. That's my area. So not that I'm biased when I say, some skills in coding is really important. I mentioned how universities have transformed digitally, and we continue to make that transformation. And every sector that you take, there will be a huge transformation in terms of digitization, but more importantly, some form of automation. Whether you're a doctor, whether you work in agriculture, and Paul talked about in their sector and so on. So some ability to code is important. It's not about coding that's really important at the end of the day, because not everybody needs to code. But by learning to code, you're learning problem-solving skills. You're learning logical thinking skills. You're learning how to give a set of instructions clearly to either a machine, or you can even translate that into a person. So those are really important skills. And I would also highlight a few other skills that weren't quite mentioned, so without repeating others. So resilience is hugely important. And I'm sure that if you haven't realized that already, you have developed those skills by actually going through this really difficult period. And this is what companies are looking for, whether the university or otherwise. So, coding, but what's behind coding is important. And finally, technology use. Every organization will have some form of technology, whether it is robotics, CRM machines, or how to use Zoom and other software tools. So we expect anyone coming into the university at whatever level they work at to have those basic technology skills.
Interesting. That's good to hear. And I think coding is an important one. Not just coding, but I get a lot of questions from students about the fact that when we talk about how do you display your skills, and a lot of them game, and I'm not a gamer, I don't understand it. I play FIFA and that's about it. But a lot of students, they like to go and play multiplayer games, but online with other people. And I like to show them that there's a lot that don't realize how many skills are involved in something like that. And what you're developing is your teamwork, your ability to communicate, obviously your hand-eye coordination, but the use of machinery as well. And those things are important to think about, what you do on a daily basis in school, outside of school. What skills is it building? And we're going to ask that question in a minute. I can see that Rob has got his hand up. So has Dr. Mellor, but Rob was first. Rob, were you going to answer one of the questions specifically, or did you want to add to this one?
I was going to add to this one, if I may. And I think that was, you actually touched on it a little bit. And I think the digital transformation, the use of technology is increasingly a part of what happens within every business. And that's something that's coming. But one thing I do observe is when I bring individuals into the business, employees in, the practical skills tend to be quite lacking, because when we focus on the academic side, kind of the physics, the maths, and the science-based activities for the rocket engineers we hire, there's a lot of that ability to work with the technology and kind of work with the computer, but put those individuals in front of bits of hardware that we're actually trying to make and physically put together to get the end result. And it is typically quite limiting there. So from my perspective, yes, there's going to be a lot more automation in the future. You read any reports and they talk about automation being a big part of manufacturing and taking some of those roles away. But inherently in everything we have, we've got to make it. So we've got to have those practical skills within the engineers that we hire to guarantee that they can do the job in the most effective way. It's really easy to design something that you can't possibly make. So I really look for those kind of skills that you can see through how a potential candidate is doing things in their time, whether it's repairing a vehicle, or it's making something, or it's fixing their bike, or it's, I don't know, taking apart toys or whatever. But those practical applications, the things you learn at school, are really critical. And me seeing those things are kind of put them straight at the top of the list, CV list for me as a potential candidate I'd hire.
Fantastic. Okay, great. Listen to those things that Rob has been speaking about there, and really go away and digest that information. That's really useful. Paul Mellor, you had your hand up as well.
Yeah, just very quickly, I just wanted to make the point that there's so much stuff out there now that you can just get for free or very cheaply. Like you can buy little computer boards now with computers on, Arduinos, all these little things. And they cost virtually nothing, and they've got incredibly powerful chips on there, and you can learn to program these things. You can buy all the tools you need. You can get all the tools you need for free online. Big complex tools. Sorry. No, that's my fault. Big complex tools that, you know, it took many years to develop. They're all out there free. Android Studio, all these kind of development tools. You can just go out and get them for free. And there's so much information online as well now on YouTube and lots of these courses that if you want to learn to do anything, you can pretty much find a lot of information out there, get some free tools, buy some cheap stuff, and you can get, you know, going with a lot of technology.
Fantastic. Brilliant. That's great advice. We've got a question. We've got a couple of questions that have come in, and one of them that is quite, I think, important to touch on. Somebody has asked, do you feel that sciences are imperative across all sectors, or are specific ones required for specific sectors? And I think we talk a lot about science, and last night we were on a session and it got mentioned, and I think sometimes we forget about humanities subjects and the things that they can teach you as well, and how much you can learn from those humanities subjects. I don't think science is imperative across all the sectors, but then we need to ask the experts that we've got on the panel. So I'll start with Kathryn quickly from Pinewood Studios. Are sciences imperative across all the sectors in your industry?
They are certainly important to various departments within a film production, for sure. It totally depends what direction you would like to take your career in. What I would do, and I should have mentioned this earlier, there is a website called Skils. If anybody is interested in perhaps looking at some of the roles within the creative industries, who could tell you a little bit more about specific roles. So I would advise you all to go to Skils if you're looking to get into the creative sector. But yes, certainly it's needed anywhere. I think with anything, you can become an expert with anything in the creative sector. You may need that expertise to advise somebody in the film industry at some point. I think we mentioned football the other day. There are plenty of films about football. So if you're a footballer or looking to be a footballer or getting into football, your skills might be needed to advise somebody who's making a film about football. So there is a need for everything as far as I'm concerned, and there is a job for everyone who has an interest in every different subject, but absolutely they're important.
Fantastic, thank you. Another question that we have that's come in, and somebody, it's a CV comment. So what other skills shout out to you on a CV? Oh, there's lots of skills that shout out on a CV. I'm going to ask Paul from Flannery Plant Hire, what skills would shout out to you on a CV? Because I know that you hire obviously apprentices as well. So you have to look at different skills and different skill sets.
I think the key thing for us would be that what jumps out is that people are articulating what they're doing at school or college, or what they do in their voluntary time, and make sure that they're demonstrating transferable skills. So when we're talking about having a positive attitude, a willingness to learn, they're demonstrating within their CV that at school or for their football team or whatever they're doing, that they're showing good communication skills, team leading skills, a positive attitude. So I think it's sort of demonstrating that they've got that get up and go, I think is a big part of what we're looking for, because that they're not going to always have the technical skills when at a certain age, and you can't say that on the CV, but what you can do is demonstrate your personality and attitude. And I think that's what differentiates a good CV from another's, where they're demonstrating transferable skills and their positive attitude. It's not easy actually to do that in a written form CV sometimes, but that's what jumps out for me.
Fantastic. And Paul has kind of answered that other question that we've got here, which is an understanding of use of machinery important, or could this be developed through a job role? I think from what we've heard from Rob, from Paul, Dr. Paul as well, and Kathryn and Harin, what we're learning is that kind of thing can be learned through a job role. What is important to have is those skills that we've talked about, that perseverance, that resilience, that hard working, that attitude, positive attitude, the curiosity, the willingness to try new things, team playing abilities, leadership skills. You've got to bring those, and companies will invest to help you understand their technologies, because everybody does something slightly differently. And that's what you're hearing from all of them. So yes, an understanding of machinery is great, but not important, because that can be developed through a job role. Obviously, in some sectors, you will need to have the right academic qualifications, but that's for specific sectors, okay? But you can develop those skills. I mean, even I turned 40 earlier this year. I can lead what I'm doing now, and in fact, I only started doing this a year and a bit ago. But I could go and I could join a company and do an apprenticeship to learn a completely different skill and learn it. As long as I've got great attitude and great skills, they'll teach me the academic bits behind it. And that's what's happening across the industry. I can see that Julia has her hand up as well. Julia, do you have a question?
It's a sort of a comment, actually. It's following up on what everybody's been saying. One of the things that strikes me about what these employers that we have on the panel would be interested in is whether the young people have got the wherewithal to reach out and get in touch. And I can't help thinking that if the students looked at all of the sector cards that we've got on the Skills Show website, and I'll just post that link again now. If you go on there, all of these panelists this morning, plus the panelists from all the other live sessions that we've been running this week, have put their information on the website and their contact details. So if you are interested in a career with any of these organisations, you would be well advised to make that first move and get in touch, because that speaks volumes to the employer that you are prepared to use your initiative and make the first step. So I just wanted to reinforce how important that is and what that says about your approach to your learning and your future and taking your next step. Fantastic, brilliant, absolutely. Get on that Skills Hub, use the information that's on there because it's fantastic. Really worthwhile information. I'm going to ask one quick fire question. We've got like 1 minute left. One quick fire question to every panelist. What is one thing that students can do at school to gain a skill to put them into a job in your sector now? And I'm going to start with Dr. Paul Mellor. One thing that students can do at school to develop a skill.
Oh God, I'd say I think of when I was at school and all the skills I could have developed but didn't, the opportunities I had to learn things, but some things I mucked about in some lessons and so on. I'd just say, make the most of your chance while you're at school, learn as much as you can, pick everything up you can, soak it all in, because it'll all be incredibly useful to you as you go forward.
Fantastic. Rob from Nammo, what about you? One thing that they can do at school?
Yeah, good
Even
question.
outside of school.
Good question. So I think one of the key things I like to see in a candidate is their ability to understand their weaknesses and work out how they can fix them. So one of the things I recommend all candidates that are looking for roles is find something you're not particularly good at and try and find a way that you can understand it better, prove that you can do the research and see if you can improve yourself in that area, because being able to do that, change the weaknesses you have, is a fantastic attribute that I like to see in the people I employ.
Fantastic, brilliant. Okay, so think about the weaknesses you have and how you can improve them. Don't be afraid to know your weaknesses. Kathryn from Pinewood Studios, one thing students could do.
I would say networking and your skills to talk to other people and ask questions, be inquisitive, ask questions, get information on top of learning, obviously.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Paul from Flannery.
I think it's about implementing that positive attitude. And what I would say is that when you think about doing something positive, do it and do it quickly. Don't say I'll do that tomorrow. When you know, grass the nettle. When we all think about doing positive things, do it and implement it at that time.
Fantastic. Okay, so think about doing positive things. Get on and do it. Don't hang around. Harin, lastly to you, one thing they can do.
Thanks. Learn to present yourself. You can have all the skills in the world, but if you cannot present that, number one, properly on a CV, and remember there are hundreds of CVs we have to get through, so we only have a few minutes to look at it. And after that, at an interview, learn how to present your skills so that other people want to work with you. Thank you so much.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Good, all good pieces of advice. And yes, about presenting yourself. Look at the Bucks Skills Hub. There's information about companies. There's information for all the sessions that we've run over the last few days. I would also say that on the Pathway CTM website, in terms of CVs, we've got lots of resources about how you can learn. There's videos of me teaching you how to write a CV, put that kind of stuff together. Use the resources available to you to learn those skills, find your weaknesses and hone them, and go and look at the industries that you're interested in. It is 9:23 and we have gone over slightly. Thank you to all of the schools that have logged in, all of the students that have got this and attended and asked questions and been inquisitive, and all the teachers that have set this up for their students. Thank you so much. This has been a great session. I've really enjoyed it. I've learned a lot more. Thank you to all of the panelists as well. Thank you so much for coming along. Really, really appreciate it. Have a good morning, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Nice to see you. Bye.
Bye.